In the quiet dusk of a fading autumn day in a small Midwestern town, where the leaves whispered secrets to the wind, Evelyn Harper stood at the edge of her worn-out porch, clutching a crumpled $10 bill, her last remnant of security. At 82, with arthritic hands that had once stitched quilts for her grandchildren and baked pies for church fundraisers, she gazed at the empty mailbox, knowing the pension check wouldn't arrive for another week. The world had shrunk to the size of her modest bungalow, its paint peeling like forgotten memories, and her fridge echoing with emptiness. But as the sun dipped low, casting long shadows on the cracked sidewalk, a thunderous roar shattered the silence, a motorcycle, sleek and black, sputtering to a halt right in front of her gate. The rider, a burly man in a leather jacket emblazoned with the fierce insignia of the Hells Angels, slumped over his handlebars, his face etched with exhaustion and pain. Evelyn's heart skipped a beat. She had heard the stories, tales of these rough riders, outlaws on two wheels, symbols of rebellion and danger. Yet, as she peered closer, she saw not a threat, but a human in distress. The man, whose name she would later learn was Jax, had a gash on his arm from a roadside mishap, and his bike's tank was bone dry. He fumbled in his pockets, pulling out empty wrappers and a few coins that clinked pitifully. "Ma'am," he rasped, his voice gravelly from the road, "you got any gas? Or maybe a phone? I ain't got nothin' left." Evelyn hesitated, her mind flashing to her own empty cupboards, the bills piling up like autumn leaves. That $10 bill was meant for a loaf of bread and a carton of milk, essentials to tide her over. But something in his eyes, a flicker of vulnerability beneath the tattoos and scars, stirred a memory of her late husband, a veteran who had taught her that kindness was the true measure of strength. Without a second thought, Evelyn stepped forward, her frail frame steady despite the chill in the air. "Here, son," she said softly, pressing the bill into his calloused hand. "It's not much, but it might get you a gallon or two down at the station. And there's a bandage in my kitchen if you need it." Jax stared at her, bewildered, as if kindness from a stranger was a foreign language. "Lady, you sure? Looks like you could use this more than me." She smiled, her eyes crinkling with the wisdom of years. "We've all got our roads to travel. Sometimes, a little help makes the journey bearable." He nodded, gratitude warring with his tough exterior, and revved his engine back to life before disappearing into the twilight. Evelyn watched him go, a pang of regret mixing with a quiet satisfaction. That night, she supped on stale crackers and water, whispering a prayer for the stranger, unaware that her simple act had ignited a spark in a heart hardened by life's rough edges. The next morning dawned crisp and golden, the kind of day that promised renewal. Evelyn rose early, as was her habit, brewing weak tea from a reused bag and tending to her tiny garden, where wilting flowers fought for survival. Her thoughts drifted to her family, children scattered across the country, too busy with their own lives to visit often. Loneliness had become her constant companion since her husband's passing 5 years ago, a shadow that deepened with each creak of the empty house. She sighed, wondering how she'd stretch nothing into sustenance, when a distant rumble grew into a deafening symphony. At first, she thought it was thunder, but as she peered out the window, her eyes widened in disbelief. A procession of motorcycles, 50 strong, thundered down her quiet street, their engines growling like a pride of lions. Riders in leather vests, bandanas, and boots dismounted. In her yard, their bikes gleaming under the sun. Jax led the pack, his arm bandaged neatly, a sheepish grin breaking through his beard. "Ma'am," Jax called out, approaching with a group of his fellow angels, their tough exteriors softened by the morning light. "You don't know me, but last night, you saved more than my ride. I was at my lowest, lost my job, fighting with the world, and you gave me your last dime without asking a thing." Evelyn's hand flew to her chest, her voice trembling. I didn't do much. Just what anyone would." But Jax shook his head, his eyes misting. "Not anyone. Most folks cross the street when they see us comin'. You saw a person, not a patch." The riders nodded in agreement, murmuring stories of their own hardships, veterans like her husband, battling demons from wars abroad and at home. One by one, they shared how Jax had rallied them that night, recounting her selfless act over beers at their clubhouse. "We ain't angels," one burly rider quipped, "but today, we're tryin' to live up to the name." What followed was an unexpected turn that Evelyn could never have imagined. The riders didn't just come to say thanks, they came bearing gifts, a testament to the ripple effect of one small kindness. First, They unloaded crates from a trailer hitched to one of the bikes, groceries enough to fill her pantry for months, fresh fruits, vegetables, meats, and even her favorite chamomile tea. We hit up the market, Jax explained. Figured you'd need more than bread. Then, a younger rider, with tattoos snaking up his arms, handed her an envelope thick with cash. We passed the hat around the chapter, he said. Ain't much, but it'll cover your bills for a while. Evelyn's eyes brimmed with tears as she counted over $1,000, more than she'd seen in years. But the surprises didn't end there. Noticing the sagging roof and peeling paint, the group rolled up their sleeves. We're handy with tools, Jax declared. Let us fix this place up. For hours, the once quiet street buzzed with activity. Hammers echoed as they repaired the porch, laughter mingled with the whir of power tools fixing leaky pipes, and stories flowed like the fresh coat of paint they applied to the walls. Evelyn sat on a lawn chair, watching in awe as these outlaws transformed her home. One rider, a former mechanic named Rico, shared how he'd hit rock bottom after losing his family, only to find brotherhood in the club. Your kindness reminded me there's good left in the world, he confided. Another, a woman with fiery red hair, spoke of overcoming addiction, inspired by small acts that rebuilt her faith in humanity. Evelyn realized then, in a profound moment of clarity, that beneath the leather and chrome were souls just like hers, searching for connection, battling invisible wars. She wasn't just receiving help, she was witnessing the power of vulnerability, how one selfless gesture could bridge divides wider than highways. As the sun climbed high, the emotional climax unfolded in a way that shook Evelyn to her core. Jax gathered everyone around, presenting a final gift, a gleaming mobility scooter, customized with comfortable seating and a basket for her garden tools. So you can get around town without worrying, he said, his voice thick with emotion. And this, he added, handing her a framed photo of the entire group, signed with messages of gratitude. Tears streamed down Evelyn's face as she embraced Jax, the hug bridging generations and worlds. You didn't just help me, she whispered. You reminded me I'm not alone. The riders cheered, their tough facades cracking into genuine smiles, and in that moment, the transformative impact was palpable, not just for Evelyn, whose life had shifted from scarcity to abundance, but for the Angels, who discovered that true strength lay in compassion, not rebellion. By evening, as the motorcycles roared away, leaving behind a revitalized home and a heart full of hope, Evelyn sat on her renewed porch, sipping fresh tea. The town whispered about the miracle on Maple Street, but for her, it was a simple truth: kindness, no matter how small, could ignite a chain reaction of goodness. In a world often divided by appearances and judgments, her story became a beacon, reminding Americans from coast to coast, and beyond, that selflessness weaves the fabric of humanity. We are all riders on life's unpredictable road, and sometimes, the greatest gifts come from the unlikeliest places. Evelyn's act proved that even in our darkest hours, a single spark of generosity can light the way home, inspiring us to pay it forward, one compassionate step at a time.